This could be good.
There's a lot of familiar faces from the world of... Over the last few weeks, I've started to notice a lot of familiar faces from the World of Warcraft community taking another look at Final Fantasy XIV. So today, I want to talk about the differences between these two games, that while sharing many similar concepts, diverge in their execution of the MMO genre. As a fan of both games and 15-year veteran of WoW, I've often thought about this subject, as I now play through Final Fantasy XIV on a near-daily basis since August of last year. I frequently get asked to compare the two, and the simplest way I've been able to do so is the following. World of Warcraft is an MMORPG, while Final Fantasy XIV is an RPG MMO.
I like how he just clicks on every video without any regards for potential spoilers. No, it's fine. I've been playing WoW for a while now. There shouldn't be any spoilers. It should be okay. Is this too loud, by the way? I'm going to turn it down a little bit, but let me know if I need to turn it back up.
MMORPG, while Final Fantasy XIV is an RPG MMO. What does this mean besides hopefully sounding clever? In Final Fantasy XIV, the entire creative process, the direction, the core concepts, all of it are approached from an intrinsically different design philosophy than that of Warcraft. So it doesn't mean you can't enjoy both, it just means they're made for two very different gamers. Let me explain. I think most people have an understanding of what an MMORPG is beyond any sort of definition. There are expectations as to what that experience will be, which is...
Wait, I'm going to say, like, going into this first point, I think... No, I don't know if I agree with that now, but I want to see if my opinion changes with how he presents this. Because, like... Final Fantasy is... Oh, I guess role-playing game. Whenever people talk about role-playing game, I always think about, like, upgrading my character. So I think about getting, like, gear and spells and thinking, like, that being the roleplay. But, like, I guess if you mean it from a context of, like, interacting with people and, like, becoming your character, then, yeah, I think Final Fantasy is very RPG. Yeah. Yeah, no, okay, I guess I do agree with that. And then WoW is more of an MMO, like, yeah, it's online, it's, like, doing dungeons, doing PvP, yeah, it's, like, doing online content. Yeah, okay, no, I agree with that, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I have no idea how that became the common definition. Yeah, I don't know, but that's how a lot of people talk about RPG is, like, a progression of character, but actually it's, like, actually representation of your character, like, going through a journey as your character is the idea, right? So, yeah, I guess it depends on how you look at the definition, but, you know, yeah.
This is why after playing Final Fantasy XIV, I've come to call it an RPG MMO. Because while all the multiplayer elements are there, I believe they aren't entirely necessary. If the MMO were removed and all we were left with was the RPG, the story, the music, the gameplay, it feels like the player would still have a complete experience. This is because the team behind Final Fantasy XIV, from its inception, has put its focus squarely on storytelling. This design choice then influences every other aspect of the game. From characters, to world building, to music, to animation, all serve to enhance the storytelling. It is without a doubt the single most vital aspect of Final Fantasy XIV. Everything comes from the story, everything is related to the story, and everything exists to service the story. So as we move forward in this video, you'll see every time I bring up a comparison or idea in Final Fantasy XIV, it's going to be in some way related to the story. And it's because of this one fact that Final Fantasy and WoW can still feel similar to a player moving between the two, but also be vastly different experiences. Let me just throw this out there. What was the story of vanilla World of Warcraft? If you had to think, it's because there was no story. There were quests, there was...
The story... Wait, did you say Warcraft 3 or World of Warcraft?
If you had to think, let me just throw this out there. What was the story of vanilla World of Warcraft?
The story of vanilla World of Warcraft was stopping the Fire Lord and Mancrick's wife was dead, and he's sad about that. Hold on. The thing is, there's like tons of smaller okay, I think World of Warcraft does have story. It just doesn't have a whole overarching story. It doesn't have it's not like Final Fantasy is like a tree that has vines that, like, you know, interlink and like stretch out and whatnot. But it's all like interwoven and connected and stuff. Whereas like World of Warcraft is like smaller, separate stories. You know? They might not all necessarily, like, you can kind of follow a story. Like, for example, if you start in an undead zone, you kind of go through the story and progression of, like, you start in the zone. There's the Blight. There was the War of the Humans versus the Scourge. Scourge. And then you have the Blight that affected all of, like, Tearsful Glades and everything like that, and the Sepulchre and like part of Hillsbrad and stuff, and then all of Western Plaguelands and Eastern Plaguelands. So, and Gilneas and the fight between the Scourge and Gilneas, I believe, if I'm not wrong. So like that is a story that then you start in as level 1 as an undead, and you kind of find out about, like, you know, the Scarlet and the Scarlet Crusade, and then when you get to a higher level, when you get to max level, they're relevant again, and you're doing Scarlet Crusade based content in Western Plaguelands and Eastern Plaguelands and stuff, and Stratholme, and so like there is a story. I don't like to think that there isn't a story in WoW. There's just a lot of little ones. But yeah, I'm definitely I'm gonna keep watching. I like watching this video and kind of giving my input and then like seeing what he has to say, because I like to think if I'm kind of catching what he's, you know, what he's doing and whatnot. Yeah.
If you had to think, it's because there was no story. There were quests, there was lore, certainly different adventures to get involved in, but no overarching story.
Yeah.
There was no driving force behind what you were doing,
with Panda,
besides the desire to gain levels, abilities, to see what's around the next bend or explore the next zone. The story of the World of Warcraft was what you, the player, made it. It was trying to find the right Zevras in the Barrens. It was sneaking into the undeveloped Mount Hyjal. It's trying to raid the enemy capital. Those were the experiences we remember. In fact, the most recent example of a great WoW memory I have is getting the Alliance Horde Slayer title and that achievement in BFA. The whole point is that you kill enough enemy players to literally be marked on the map as a bounty, and then people try to come kill you, and if you survive long enough, you get an achievement. It was one of the most exhilarating recent memories I have in the game. I loved every moment of it. In Final Fantasy XIV, if you ask someone their favorite...
I like that his comparisons are not like shitting on WoW and being like, FF good, WoW bad. I like that he's trying to show you the differences of these two games, but saying that they're still good. So far, this is cool.
Moment, and I did. Almost every single person is going to say theirs is related to story. Obviously, this isn't every player, as many players find the same camaraderie and accomplishment as WoW players.
Yo, I just got here. I got here yesterday. Look at this, huh? I remember. Yeah, my favorite moments in Final Fantasy actually haven't been story. It's been raiding, which just goes to show you how amazing the raiding's been for me, because I do love this story, but the raiding has still been the absolute peak for me.
Taking down harder bosses. But for the majority of players, the story is not just an important part of the game, it's also something that binds the community together. With that said, after years of playing WoW, to say there isn't a fan base for the world or story building they're doing would be foolish, as I am one of them. But let's be real, the majority of players simply do not care about the plot of Warcraft. I'd have to guess that's because it was never really the driving force of the game that got them playing in the first place, and more importantly, sticking with it. The fact is, as Blizzard moves more towards storytelling in their more recent expansions, they've developed multiple ways of getting across major plot information to players who may be interested, but it's not integral for the player's enjoyment. It's this delivery that provides the necessary surface-level context to keep a player engaged, but has also formed a complicated relationship with players who do enjoy story and world building in Warcraft. Team leads and devs change, shifting the vision for each expansion to fit what is essentially the rule of cool. While main story beats are planned ahead, it's very clear that things have changed or will change based on necessity. Main characters vanish, story elements are left behind, and lore is retconned to fit with the moment. As a big old lore nerd, years of that have definitely left me kind of jaded when it comes to WoW.
Yeah.
A silly example is...
I used to get very excited about every piece of like cinematic, I don't know, every piece of cinema that they would release. like every time there was a new expansion, I'm like, oh, I'm so hyped for the trailer. I'm so hyped for like seeing the characters and everything. And then after a while, like I'd be like, oh, that one was kind of like not amazing, but like, okay, the next one, like I'm gonna be stoked for. And then, oh, that one was like not quite amazing. And then, oh, that one was really good. And then, oh, that one wasn't amazing. And after a while, I've just kind of been like, nah, I don't really care as much. Like, I still look forward to them, but I'm not expecting much when it comes to like the new like, you know, videos. The recent one they did with like Anduin and Thrall and stuff, I did think was really cool, and it looked incredible. Like, you cannot deny that they look absolutely amazing. But yeah, I'm really hoping that the new WoW story in the War Within is going to be really good. I'm going to play through it when I do, when it releases. I'm not playing any of that in beta. I don't want to look at any of the story or any of the zones. When I go in, I'm going to do every quest. Like when the game releases, I'm going to do every quest. I'm going to do every piece of like lore stuff that I can and see if I can re-engage with the World of Warcraft story, because I've been inspired by playing Final Fantasy and loving the story here. I want to see if I can have a similar experience with WoW via paying a lot of attention to it. So I'm going to see.
Years ago at BlizzCon, I asked the devs about that weird snake tail in Gundrak. I was like, what is that thing? Their response then, and ever since, has pretty much been, we really don't know. Perhaps it was snuck in, perhaps it was dropped content.
That's a shame.
Who knows?
So for those of you that don't know, yeah, here it is. Okay, he's probably just going to explain it. Yeah.
All I could say is, if it was in Final Fantasy XIV, that snake tail would not only have had a purpose, but it would have shown up 2 expansions later as an important character in an ongoing story.
Yeah, that snake, I actually remember what he's talking about. It's in Gundrak. Is really cool because you're in this zone where, like, yeah, I don't know. There's like, in the zone, I'm pretty sure there's like presence of this giant snake, and then it's in that dungeon, and then it never gets spoken about, and that's a shame because I remember playing Wrath of the Lich King, and I would have been 15, I think. And I would have been excited to know, like, oh, what's this going to be? What, you know, is this going to be involved somehow? And it just wasn't, yeah.
Yep, this is going to be one of those videos that's long enough to be split into multiple parts. But it's good, because it allows us to dive a little deeper. When it comes to content, both games feature the staples of the MMORPG genre to differing degrees. Leveling, dungeons, raids, PvP, special events, grinds, and daily quests. In fact, some on the 2 dev teams are friends, and they definitely borrow ideas from each other all the time. Yoshi P, the director of Final Fantasy XIV, is notably a huge Blizzard fan. The difference, of course, comes from what the dev teams have decided the focus of their games should be. The best way I can simplify this is to say that Warcraft is more about the destination, and Final Fantasy XIV is more about the journey. As an example, in WoW, the leveling process in, say, a new expansion is a buffer between you and max level where the real game starts. I was once told by a friend that he always thought of it as advertisement for places that later on at max level you'll spend time grinding. Once you've leveled up, you can begin doing harder dungeons, farming gear in Mythic Plus, running raids, joining PvP battlegrounds.
That's a nice way of thinking about some things. Advertisement for things to come. I do feel like in an MMORPG, you know it's going to be a long journey, and it can be really encouraging and motivating to like to look at things. You know, you look at gear on certain players when they're AFK in a major city, or you see a certain zone or a dungeon or something, and it makes you go like, "Ooh, I can't wait to get there and check that out." You know, when you're in a guild. Oh yeah, when you're in a guild and you're leveling through. I remember like when I used to be a chain re-leveler. Like I never hit max level in vanilla. Like it took me like I made maybe 20 or 30 characters in vanilla and like never hit max level until right before Burning Crusade was about to release. So I never got to really appreciate enough of vanilla. I may have done a bit of Molten Core, I think. But I remember, like, I'd be in a guild, and you'd see everyone logging on and getting ready for raid night, and you'd see the buzz that was going on. This was back when I was 11. This is 20 years ago. And you'd see the buzz in your guild chat of people getting ready to go to this raid, Molten Core. And I just remember that feeling of being so stoked to just be like, wow, that sounds so cool. I can't wait to get there one day. So I actually do like that way of viewing things. Yeah.
Rounds or arenas and doing your daily quests or grinding rep. And for years, this has not only been a pretty standard MMORPG cycle, but WoW has been the best at it. The goal, of course, is keeping players engaged and logged in. And going back to our original story discussion, doing most of these things continues the Warcraft story as well. In Final Fantasy XIV, it's a bit different. With the story being the most important part, this means leveling isn't just a rush to max level to experience the cool parts are the leveling. At max level, there are certainly raids and dailies and grinds and PvP, but they're nowhere near the complexity of WoW. Leveling up a job in Final Fantasy XIV isn't just about the leveling process either. Sure, in WoW you can level up an alt, experience the other faction's story, and a lot of people enjoy that. But in Final Fantasy XIV, each job has its own story and quests associated with it. They're varying in size and scope, but like the Dark Knight, for example, is universally loved for being some of the best storytelling in the game. But again, story is what it's about. Most large-scale raids only have one difficulty level and are more events than actual team building struggles. Those raids and trials that do have harder modes are canonically fan fiction versions of the events, so players who are just there for the story won't miss anything if they don't have time for harder content. PvP, while vibrant, is nothing close to that of WoW. Reputations and dailies exist, but not in a way that forces the player to spend a significant amount of time investing in them. But you're rewarded in a way that makes it feel like you're kind of getting one over on the devs for the amount of time you actually put into it. Let me give you some specific examples. Let's talk reputation.
No, I couldn't remember that. I couldn't remember that phase. I was like, no, I know it's Hades, and I was like, wait, I don't remember this exact 10-second clip. I was like, oh shit. Maybe it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's like an extreme, because remember, I've not done like the extremes of stuff, so I didn't know. Maybe it's like an extreme version or something. So I didn't want to see.
Admittedly, in WoW, I haven't played much beyond the start of max level content in Shadowlands, and this may be different, but if we look at most reputation grinds, it's usually something along the lines of like, you earn 750 rep a day with a weekly bonus of some sort, and you need 40 to 50k rep to reach Exalted. So you're looking at, I don't know, over a month of rep farming to reach max reputation.
Yeah.
This, of course, is part of the design philosophy again, to keep you engaged in the world longer. In Final Fantasy XIV, while some of the older reputations are pretty similar, the newer ones, take Pixies for example, are designed not only to be fast, but to feel very rewarding. Every day you get 3 quests that take roughly 15 minutes to complete, and as a reward, you get tons of reputation, tokens that you can eventually buy rep items with, and then loads of experience. I'm talking like a quarter of your XP bar for 3 quests. And this is great because not only does it make grinding rep easy, but it also rewards you for doing it on one of your other jobs, incentivizing you to level additional classes. Let's take another example. Unlocking Flight. In WoW, unlocking Flight has always been a process. A thing that you really had to earn. Currently, I think to unlock Flight, it's something like getting Renown 44 and completing the last sigil and having completed Chapter 12 of the Covenant campaign, receiving memories to unlock account-wide flying, and then you can do it in Shadow.
Yeah, so you have to do you have to explore every single zone. You have to hit the max reputation with multiple factions. Wide world of quests. I think you have to do a certain number of quests or something, was that? Yeah, there was like a lot of like random stuff you'd have to do, and you still had to wait like 6 months for them to then implement it. You didn't just get it instantly. You'd get it like way later, so yeah.
Shadowlands. In Final Fantasy XIV, while exploring the map that you're already exploring anyway, you use a compass to find little green wind orbies, and when you find them all and you complete the area story arc, you unlock flying for that specific zone. It's not account-wide, but it's easy enough to get just by going through the leveling process. From a design standpoint, I love this. When I first learned this is how you got flying in Final Fantasy XIV, I was actually angry about all the time WoW made me waste. In Final Fantasy XIV, you get to experience the zone, which is what WoW's trying to get you to do, but 14 doesn't gate your ability to move through it quicker in the future behind some sort of grind. Yeah. Which has probably got a few of you now thinking, Jesse, you're making it seem like you don't have to work for much in Final Fantasy XIV. But of course you do. There are things like fancy relic weapon grinds and stuff like that, but not nearly to the degree that WoW makes you grind out stuff. Honestly, I think we're so used to Blizzard making us go through content multiple times for months in order to unlock something like flying that anything less seems ridiculously easy. But that shouldn't be the case, gang. I don't know anyone who enjoys it, but we still do it. It all just comes down to the fact that the Final Fantasy XIV devs are not trying to keep you in their world for countless hours. So it seems like everything is a little easier. The fact is, the 14 devs have literally said they don't care if you log in every day. Get what you want from their game, come back when you want more. Instead, the grindy bits of Final Fantasy XIV are something entirely different. I recently saw this ad for Final Fantasy XIV, and it made me laugh, because I've never seen anything like this for WoW. But most Final Fantasy XIV players will tell you this is where the majority of your max level adventure lies. Look at this thing. Gathering, crafting,
Yeah.
free companies or guilds.
Not a single competitive thing in any... I mean, some of you might say that housing is pretty competitive. And realistically, for fashion, you have to do the hardest content in the game just so you can unlock the pretty outfits. So, yeah, I guess so. But, like, there's... You know what I mean? There's no traditionally competitive, like, instance content, right? So, it's kind of... Yeah, I like this. It just shows that there's so much more to the game. It's like he says, it's the journey. It's the whole. It's everything in the game. It's not just like an end game simulator. And I think this is only worsened since Shadowlands. We're now in Dragonflight, and then yeah, it's gonna be the same in the next expansion. Like, it's just do the end game stuff. Forget about leveling. Just be max level.
Housing, fashion, the gold saucer, which is like a permanent version of the Darkmoon Fair. And I'll be honest, yeah, this is pretty much endgame in Final Fantasy XIV. That's not to say 14 doesn't have challenging content for those looking for a more traditional MMO raiding experience, but like the point I'm trying to make is that in WoW, the endgame focus is on harder and harder raiding and mythics, PvP, both arena, battleground, and world, with all the other things in the game existing to aid in doing so. In 14, the endgame focus is more diverse. Although there are Savage and Ultimate difficulty raids designed for those who want a more challenging experience, there's also things like building a cool guild house, or crafting a special weapon from a weird boss drop, or going on treasure hunts. There's more to do than just raiding for the sake of raiding. Speaking of crafting, one of the biggest issues I have with WoW is that crafting for so long has seemed totally pointless once Looking for Raid was created. Any gear you could craft, say as a leather worker, was useless for those who could just get raid gear easily. Meanwhile, in Final Fantasy XIV...
I don't think LFR is what made crafting useless. I think literally any content after the first week made it useless. But yeah, I mean, his point stands. He's not like... That's me being a bit nitpicky, I think. But, you know, he's still agree. By the way, thank you for the follows coming through, everyone. Fabitastic. Fabitastish, Stylized Ramen, and Luxana. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Gathering and crafting is very much a major part of the endgame experience. If you're curious about other things, PvP for example, I mean, in this case, WoW definitely wins this one.
Yeah.
There is PvP in Final Fantasy XIV in the form of war games, and there are many people who enjoy it. It's just that there's a wider variety and larger community in WoW. It is, after all, part of the core concept. Faction.
I just think the way that the game is designed in WoW, like the response and everything, the response time you have is just like, it's so much better for PvP. Final Fantasy just, I think, struggles, but yeah.
And warfare. This doesn't exist in 14. There are no warring player factions. In fact, much of the story is about getting all the nations of the world on the same team. The funny thing is, as WoW attempts to add more story, the PvP they're doing makes less and less sense narratively. And that's, I mean, just the tip of the iceberg of the endgame experience. There's a lot more to talk about, but since we are talking endgame, I think we should flip it and do the starting experience. Going back to the design philosophies of the two games, we can see differences in the
difference between a game that was designed around PvP versus one that just has PvP. It's funny though that you say that, because PvP is considered as such a neglected aspect of the game in WoW. It's kind of funny that a lot of people look at WoW and be like, yeah, man, but they design around PvP. It's like, they don't design around PvP. Like, they kind of have forgotten its existence. So it's funny.
Premise of each and how it affects your intro into the game. In World of Warcraft, you start your experience as just one of the many faces in service of your chosen faction. Over time, your actions in defeating various threats increase your importance to the world.
Actually, I think that's... Hold on. I think that's what turned me into a furry. Hold on. Maybe I had a furry awakening at 12 and I didn't realize. WoW Vanilla Cinematic. I think it was when I saw the sexy night elf lady turn into a panther that was just kind of cool. Hold on, look at this. Well, no, you guys always just call me a furry, and I can't be bothered to fight you on it anymore. You know, who am I to... Look. Look, look, look. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Now imagine there was a Lalafell on her shoulders. No. Ready? Right here. Rawr. Rawr. How is that not the coolest, dude? How is that not the coolest?
Final Fantasy XIV, you are literally the Warrior of Light, the chosen hero from moment one.
Have I seen this?
There is no denying your importance to the story. The entire narrative revolves around you. Even though initially you're not recognized as such, I mean, that's what you are. Quickly proving yourself to the world. From that point on, every character not only acknowledges you, but they recognize the importance of your role over theirs. So add that to the story being the most important element, and you'll see how this might be a daunting task for some new players. Much of the 14 starting experience it's pretty slow. World building, character introduction, lasting roughly the first 50 levels. I actually think this is one of the biggest problems Final Fantasy XIV has, as it's a hard sell to explain how phenomenal this game becomes only after you put in 40.
I'm so glad that he also sees this. I'm not crazy, man. I'm not crazy. Yes, I am going to do a video on this. This needs to be addressed, man. I need to voice my concerns. This is the thing, dude. This is the thing. Yeah. I don't think anyone disagrees. Oh, okay, fair enough.
Hours. But that's exactly what I was told, and what I have told others. Because it's true. The strong connection to narrative hurts the starting experience, especially for new players who may have friends playing or seen an amazing moment from a recent expansion, but they can't play it themselves without playing through 100 hours of story or paying for a skip and finding themselves completely disconnected from the plot. And that is a real shame, because the game uses all of that story and setup to build out the rest of the world. So if you skip over the starting experience, the amount of stuff you miss is mind-boggling. And because the story is so well told, and all the characters and locations and factions, etc., are so perfectly fit into the puzzle that is the main plot, that when twists happen, they make perfect sense. When reveals are made, it's like, oh yeah, of course! All because of that level 1 through 50 experience laying the foundation. And as I've said, I've experienced both ends of this. Years ago, when the game first came out, I gave it a shot, and around level 40, was totally burnt out. It wasn't until I returned last year looking for something new that I gave the game a second chance on the recommendation of a friend. I'm so glad I listened, because for a fan of story like me, what this game offers is a fantastic experience. Sadly, the reason behind Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn's slow start can be traced back to its origins as a reboot of the disaster that was the original Final Fantasy XIV. The budget was small, the timetable was short, and it shows. It isn't until the later patches of A Realm Reborn and the release of the first expansion, Heavensward, that the game truly shines. The production value skyrockets, the writing is less long-winded, the voice actors change, just about everything is better than where it started.
Look at that, the youth on this man. 10 years of game development, or of lead game deving will age you.
And universally, everyone acknowledges this fact, which is why I assume the free trial, with memes and all, includes Heavensward. If you're gonna keep playing the game, it's the first expansion that's gonna get you. What's totally insane about all of that is only by sticking with it can you then truly appreciate the slow burn A Realm Reborn was and all the ideas it introduces that later become very important. It's like when your parents gave you some advice as a kid and you didn't listen, and now you're 30 and you're like, damn, that was good advice. I should have listened. But again, how do you sell that to people? Meanwhile, the WoW starting experience is much more welcoming to new players, because
I always say with the FF experience, it's like telling someone, it's like watching a series and being like, oh dude, you gotta watch this new series, or you gotta watch this series. Trust me, when you get to season 3, it gets really good. And they're like, okay, what about season 1 and 2? And they're like, oh, not very good. And you're like, okay, I don't want to watch 40 episodes of a show that's not good. And they're like, no, trust me, it gets good. It's like, I don't know that I care. It's hard to convince someone that they're gonna care about something in the future that they don't care about now, because, like, how do you do that? How do you You know, it's like when you tell kids, "Hey, you shouldn't smoke at 15 because, like, oh, in 20 years, you know, it's not going to be good." And they're like, I don't even know what 20 years is. Not done that yet. I've only done 15. I can't even imagine 20 years. Uh, but you know, it's one of those. Like he says, it's like, you know, advice from a parent you don't listen to, and then when you're 30, yeah. I like that. That's good. Yeah.
Updating it and changing it, a thing Final Fantasy XIV can't do without damaging the plot it's trying to set up. Because Warcraft doesn't concern itself with this. They now offer multiple ways to level, a special starting zone designed to teach new players. They have streamlined the process of getting your character to the end game, which, as we discussed, is a core design philosophy. But this means, depending on when you started playing, your story experience in World of Warcraft could be entirely different from another player. Some moments I may have experienced years ago are no longer in the game, making it so things that bind players and keep them engaged in the game are not story, but its progression systems, guild dynamics, and faction conflict, which I think explains why people enjoy playing Classic, as it has all the things I just listed, but also a shared sense of existing in the same world, which I feel like, I think many of you would say, the current iteration of WoW does not have. Another way to look at this is how new content is delivered. If we look at the two most recent completed content cycles in both WoW and 14, the picture we get of everything I've been talking about becomes more clear. In WoW, the new content starts with the release of a trailer, a big budget, stunningly well made, sometimes shocking reveal. It's usually a way for Blizzard to show the first major inciting story moment. This is something like Sylvanas breaking the Helm of Domination or Deathwing destroying the world. Then, before launch, there's a book and maybe some short stories about major characters involved in the next expansion. We'll get a pre-patch event, and then the expansion will release. And for the most part, every WoW expansion follows a similar formula. We get a short burst of main story, before pausing for leveling content, and eventually returning to the main plot. Then a major raid is released, and the story for the main plot continues, as we get a series of patches culminating in the last patch of the expansion, and the showdown with the big bad. Then the cycle begins again with a new trailer. Because of its heavily story-based nature, almost all of the content in 14 is delivered in-game. So, in the previous expansion's 4th major patch, you'll get hints of a new story. By the time the 5th major patch rolls around, you'll have more information, important details or new jobs will be hinted at, and then, around the same time, we get the trailer. Unlike WoW, it's not a single moment, but a series of vignettes and a hint of things to come in the next expansion. Then at launch, the main story is experienced and completed throughout the leveling process. The first major patch and so on are there to wrap up loose ends, tell new smaller stories either via raid or a series of max level trials, or introduce new areas that serve as a way to grind out special weapon skins. And then, by the end of the 3rd major patch, the story of the expansion is wrapped up, and then the 4th patch continues the trend of hinting at what will be in the new expansion. So once again, I'm sure the obvious difference comes down to the initial design choice by the two dev teams. The reason the Warcraft patch cycle is what it is to keep players engaged longer. So if you're a fan of story, for example, you need to keep with it through all the patches to see the end. While Final Fantasy XIV, designed to deliver story most of all, gives you a completed one at launch, then adds additional adventures afterwards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. I think, hold on, there was somebody, oh yeah, you guys saying about the books as well. It's, you know what's funny is like, people look at the idea of WoW having books as a really bad thing, but I think if you're absolutely like if Final Fantasy, I think Final Fantasy has some books, but like they have like the encyclopedia, right? But like if there were Final Fantasy books on additional lore about, I don't know, some shit about the Sharlayans or the like imagine Final Fantasy, they release a book all about the Allagans and like the history of the Allagans. You guys would buy that instantly, and you would. But when people talk about it in World of Warcraft, people look at it very negatively because they're like, oh my god, I need to go here to learn about the story. And yeah. That's a fair point, and that's what I was going to get to, is the issue of like what kind of content you put in the books. If the main story requires you to read the book to understand what's going on in game, I think that's bad. The book should be supplementary content. Maybe, for example, you could do a book on like Gaius, von Bolsack, right? You could do a book on like him going and killing all the Asians and like what he was doing in the interim between when we kill him and him reappearing, right? Like that right there is an amazing story that you could write a book on. I don't know if that exists. Oh yeah, we have those. Awesome. But like, imagine if they did that with certain characters, and it's like what they were doing whilst they weren't on screen. Maybe something with like Alice when she went to investigate coils. Maybe there could be something there with what she did, or like maybe a short story about Kryl when she was captured, and what happened to her, or something like. Again, these are like little ideas that we already know about via the main story, but we could explore through stories, and I think that would be like really, really cool. Um, they publish some of those things for free. I have seen one. I did see the short story of Kryl and Tataru convincing Estinian to come and babysit us. I can't remember what for. We convinced him to come and help us with something. Um, and it was Kryl. There's like a short story of Kryl and Tataru doing that. But again, these could be like sort of full-fledged like books and stuff if they wanted to, maybe. But yeah, side stories are on the main website. The main books are the encyclopedia, and there's a couple of printed side stories, so don't have to pay for it. It's just if you want physically. Yeah, that's great. That is really, really great. So that stuff does exist in Final Fantasy. I think that's fantastic. But yeah, I don't think the idea that WoW has additional stories is a bad thing, and I think that that gets way too much hate. But I understand the idea that people don't like that it's core story that is in the WoW books. But again, I think that's the difference between a Western studio and an Eastern studio is that the Western studio cares about money, money, money. And in the East, they're happy if the lights stay on in the building. You know what I mean? So I think that's just how it is.
The most notable difference in gameplay between the two, I think, is to start the global
But
cooldown.
sorry, I should comment. So yeah, so he was talking about like the sort of the content cadence and everything like that. Yeah, do I have anything else that I want to say on that? Oh shit, patch 5.4. I don't want to look at that. Yeah, WoW's stuff is quite messy right now. The playthrough of WoW stuff is a bit messy. Yeah, I don't think I really. Yeah, I'm not going to force a react there. I think I'm kind of happy with that.
The most notable difference in gameplay between the two, I think, is to start, the global cooldown in Final Fantasy XIV is 2.5 seconds.
That'd be nice, Snacky.
So when you're level 10, for example, and you only have 3 abilities, it seems like there's a lot of downtime. Later on, as you unlock other off-cooldown skills or increase your stats to lower your GCD, this changes, but for the start, it definitely feels pretty slow. This also translates into differences between the spell and ability rotations of the two games. Warcraft is more reactionary. Build up a bar or wait for a crit to trigger an ability, while Final Fantasy XIV is more proactive, where the player weaves a pattern of combos together to create a string of pre-planned attacks. Even the procs in Final Fantasy XIV are associated with patterns and planning. Combat in WoW is like a street brawl, and Final Fantasy XIV is like a dance. And because 14 is more of a dance, the combat is more spectacular, and the spell effects are way more flashy than those in WoW. And for the most part, spell effects aren't necessarily designed with large groups in mind, unlike Warcraft. So when you're in a 24-man raid and all the effects are going off...
Okay, this right here, by the way, I want you guys to know that when people are looking at Final Fantasy XIV and they say, dude, that game is way too much, this is what they're talking about. These are the images that they've seen, and I fully agree from that standpoint. However, having since like started playing the game, it's toned down so much more on my eyes now. Like you really do adjust to it. It's like going from a really bright room into immediately turning all the lights off and it being pitch black, and you're kind of stumbling around for a second, and then you're like, hold on. Okay, I can actually see now. That's what happens. Same thing if you look at WoW. I fully agree. I think it's an MMO thing. I think because MMOs, there's so much with the fact that you have unique UIs and everything. Like every UI is different. Every shoot, if you could go look at any shooter, Destiny, Overwatch, COD, like gun in the middle, ammo on the side, maybe a grenade or something indicator on the side, and then like mini map in the top right corner, and like that's kind of it, like that's the UI. You know what you're looking at, you know what you're getting. You can plug in any FPS. MMOs are just you can have everything everywhere, and you know you can always change. Got all these action buttons, spells going off, ability animations and telegraphing can be different. Yeah, so it gets pretty intense, doesn't it? Overwatch doesn't have Overwatch doesn't have a minimap. Yeah, they don't have a PvE playthrough either.
It can sometimes feel blinding, so much so that there are options in 14 to decrease or turn them off for other players. Speaking of making changes to the game, 14 has a pretty amazing HUD customization in the base game. While you can do a lot more with the various add-ons in WoW, 14 gives you enough tools to customize your experience so that you don't feel the absence of add-on support. This UI customization allows for the use of a controller, which the game was designed with in mind, allowing for cross-platform play between PC and PlayStation. This allows for some pretty fun player interface options and looks, letting you clutter your screen with as much information or as little as you want. And we can't forget about the accessibility of players who simply can't use a mouse and keyboard. Accessibility can be found in 14 in the form of universal language on markers and effects. I'm sure that as you've watched this video, you've noticed in the Final Fantasy XIV segments the same markers on the ground over and over and over again, to the point where players can have some idea of what's coming their way based on the effect. They understand what's about to happen and what's required. Another major gameplay difference, which is probably what we should have started with over again.
I remember seeing this enemy in Costa del Sol, and I was like, oh man, I really hope that they do a fight designed around a shark. Wasn't this Shadowbringers? Yeah, level 80. This is Anaida. Yeah, this is a dungeon. Yeah, I was like, oh, I really hope they do a shark boss. And that was before I did Leviathan. I was like, oh, I really hope they do like a water boss, like a shark boss. And everyone was like, oh, just wait. I think you guys were talking about Leviathan specifically, and I've now killed Leviathan twice, which is really cool, seeing two different forms of that. But yeah, I like that this is... Oh, this is 5.0? I am in 5. Yeah, I am in Shadowbringers. That's what I said, right? I said this was Shadowbringers. What did I say? I mean, it's like level 80. Yeah, it's Shadowbringers, yeah. Talking about unique UI, I've been playing WoW since WoD, and I still struggle with streamers' UIs, with every looking different with add-ons and weak cores. Yeah, I agree. That's why I like playing default WoW UI, because everyone just can come in and know. Like, you know, if you use add-ons, you still know what normal UI looks like. Whereas if you don't use add-ons, you don't know what's going on. Yeah. Oh, that was another chatter. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, sure.
To the point where players can have some idea of what's coming their way based on the effect. They understand what's about to happen and what's required. Another major gameplay difference, which is probably what we should have started with, is the ability for one character to play every job or class in the game and switch between them. If you choose Black Mage to start, for example, like I did, and you end up hating it, like I did, then you can switch to another job and try something new. Fall in love with something new, like a Red Mage, or a Warrior, or a Dragoon, like I did. And 14 is designed with this one character leveling multiple things in mind. WoW, on the other hand, is designed around having to create multiple alts to try different classes. But unlike 14, each of these new characters has some sort of racial ability or special action, and 14 doesn't have that. It doesn't mean you can't level alts in 14, but it's unnecessary to experience all the game has to offer.
Yeah, so quick point on that. I think Blizzard, when they first created World of Warcraft, they have these factions. You're split. You're either Horde or you're Alliance. You pick your race. Your race, not every race can be every class, and not every class can be every race. You're locked into this thing that you're picking, and you're able to sort of create your more unique experience by these limitations. And I do actually kind of like that. I do like racials and stuff. A lot of the wider WoW player base these days don't like the fact that different races have different things. They wish that you could just pick your ability rather than being stuck to like whatever you have. I personally kind of liked that. Sometimes your restrictions like, man, I wish I could be like an orc druid or something. But at the same time, it was kind of cool, like being a druid and being like, I get to be a night elf. If you play paladin, you don't get to be a night elf. So I don't know, maybe there's that kind of weird gatekeeping with me or something like that somehow. But as time's gone on, they've looked to change some of these things. The big thing for me with WoW is the inability to, like, they designed this game around the fact that they have all these restrictions, and then they didn't make the game alt friendly. And I think that if they had made the game alt friendly over the last 20 years, WoW would be in a way better state. And I think that it was a mistake for them. Because, like, Final Fantasy has kind of designed a lot of the game. I know you can look at certain things. We were looking earlier today about materia in Final Fantasy being an issue with, like, playing different jobs, but with the same gear slot. Say, Samurai and Monk share gear, but you might want different materia, skill, speed, or crit, etc. That's, okay, yeah, it's not perfect for alt jobs and stuff, but generally speaking, you have one character, you can play all the jobs. It's quite comfortable doing that. WoW is looking to fix this, though, so if anyone is interested, I'm trying to give you new information since this video was made. In the new expansion, which is currently in beta, The War Within, WoW is looking to do a lot more account-wide stuff, account-wide reputations, account-wide gear, so you're going to be able, they're doing this new thing called warbands, so if you Google warbands if you're interested, they're making it so that you can sort of connect your characters on your account, and they will share progression on things, and you can potentially loot an item, and it will be, instead of it being like soulbound and locked to that character or whatnot, it'll be like warband bound. And so you can put it in a bank that's shared across all your characters, and it might be like, you might play a rogue, but you get like a mage staff, and it might be really good, and you might be like, oh man, wow, this is so good. I might go and play a mage now because this item is so good. You can throw it onto your mage, and then you can get playing, and you can continue your progression. There's certain characters. There's these thing called delves. You're going to get an NPC, which you're going to level up. That character is going to be account bound or account wide, so you're not going to have to re-level it on every new character. So they are really working to make alt friendliness a way bigger priority for them. And the nice thing with WoW is like your gear is account bound with like transmogs and stuff like that. They're making it even better now though. So yeah, those are some good things coming with WoW that I am pretty happy with, which is good. Yeah. But yeah, I see some of you guys are negative about like racials and restrictions and Horde and Alliance and stuff like that. I get that. I can see why you would not like it. Especially since playing Final Fantasy, I'm kind of like, you should just be able to be anything on anything. So I've kind of transitioned more into liking that, yeah. Yeah, I think WoW has definitely had to look at 14 and pull from that and go, hold on a minute, what's so, what are these things that feel so good about FF that we need to start really considering more? Yeah. Alt friendly, I wouldn't mind either way. FF is not alt friendly at all, but you don't need it to be. WoW kind of has this, if you have alts, you have an advantage, but you're handicapped when making an alt. Do you have an advantage on an alt in WoW in any way? Maybe farming transmog or mounts or something, I guess, but like, it's really awful to, like, even now on WoW, if you want to level an alt character, you have to refarm all of your flight stones, all of your currencies to level that character up. If you want to make your alt character as competitive as your main, you have to put 100% as much work into your alt as you did your main, which is wrong. You should have to put like 20% of the effort into your alt as you did your main. It should be like, you should have to do the bulk of your work on your main job, your main character, your main class, whatever, and then playing an alt job, an alt class, an alt whatever, should just be a fraction of the amount of time you had to spend, So
Craft
yeah.
does, however, have more overall combat diversity, with the option to choose talents and spec out your character in fun, weird ways, although a lot of the time people just look up what the best is. Also, the classes in
an
WoW
Icy Veins link. Oh boy, okay, an Icy Veins link.
Ways, although a lot of the time people just look up what the best is. Also, the classes in WoW seem more wild and vibrant compared to that of Final Fantasy XIV. There are no Demon Hunter or Brewmaster analog, for example. It does have a Blue Mage, but it's treated as more of a joke class with wacky overpowered abilities that isn't really allowed in current content. Also, WoW really nails raiding in PvP. It's what the game was designed for, and they do it very well. The raids in WoW are larger and more intricate, the PvP is more varied and complex, but Final Fantasy XIV does something very fun with its dungeons, raids, and trials by including synced, unsynced, and minimum item level settings. You can change the difficulty of a dungeon, for example, to be exactly how it was when you first ran it in your low-level gear, or to cheese the hell out of it at max level. The last thing of note is that when crafting or gathering, 14 is much more visual and complex than WoW. It's not just clicking a node. They're actually separate jobs, separate skills, separate stories, and separate gear that you can play without ever doing the main story. Although you'd need it to unlock some zones, There are whole events built around using these crafting and gathering jobs. Building a city, for example. And as I mentioned before, crafting actually makes viable gear, unlike WoW, whose crafters are mostly...
Wait, hold on. Pyronus, what are you talking about? WoW is trying to push more of a cohesive story, but still time gates the end of the story for casuals. The new story mode won't release until the last wing of LFR releases. So players have to wait 2 months to get the entire story? Wait, what do you mean? I can't tell if that's wrong or if you're you just know something that I don't. Like I'm ignorant to this here. I don't know if you know something I don't, or if you're getting it like twisted or something. I'm assuming you know something I don't, because I know you do play WoW, right? But sorry, let me rewind this a little bit.
Jobs, separate skills, separate stories, and separate gear that you can play without...
Oh, because LFR comes out after normal, so as a casual player, you don't get to get the story until after... Okay, yeah, you just mean like that? Yeah, okay. But, like, in that case, like, why don't you just get better as a player? Like, why do you suck? Why not just be good, you know? No, I'm obviously joking. In before YouTube comments, but, he's toxic. Get out of my Final Fantasy, go back to WoW. You almost made me there. If I ever say anything and you think, wow, that's upsetting, it was a joke. Yeah, disclaimer, Sai is making a joke. Thank you, Snacky. Yeah, that's kind of shitty. They should release LFR quicker. Like, what they should do with WoW's LFR... So, LFR is looking for raid. It's the story version of the raid. They release it in segments, but over the course of, like, 6 weeks. Whereas the like, normal, heroic, and, like, mythic difficulties of the raid release, like, immediately. So it's the story mode players that have to wait like a long time. Now, the cynic in me would say that the reason they do that is because if you're a story player, then maybe once you complete the story, you unsub. If they cause it to release over 6 weeks, you have to pay for a second month of sub, right? That is the cynic in me. I think that the reason they do that is because of gearing. You get gear from LFR, so I think maybe they're trying to slow your gear progression. But I think that would be a pretty shitty reason, and I think ultimately you shouldn't really get gear from LFR. You should only be going there for story-based purposes. The advantage of going there for gear is it makes people still run it. Like when people level an ult, even if they're a really high-level player, they might go to LFR because they need gear. So it keeps... You know, imagine if you came into the game late, you came into the expansion 5 months in, and you want to do the story, and you can't because nobody's queuing for it. I could see that being an issue. So yeah, there's maybe a discussion point there, but I think that they should definitely release LFR immediately, all of the cases of it, so you could get the story. And I think they are making changes to it. So in this new expansion, I think they are making some changes to the LFR. So keep that in mind. They are going to be doing some changes there. They're doing a story-only mode. Yeah, exactly, Midia, yeah. And I think it's going to be like a 5-player mode of the raid, so that you can just queue in and very quickly experience the story. I think that's the idea. So... but again, WoW's got a 20-year history. LFR has been out for like 10 years, and it's been that way for this whole time. So, you know, probably a fix that could have come in sooner. I fully agree. Yeah.
Actually, separate jobs, separate skills.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Separate stories and separate gear that you can play without ever doing the main story.
Oh, they're still time gating it? Okay, that's pretty trash. Yeah.
Although you'd need it to unlock some zones, there are whole events built around using these crafting and gathering jobs. Building a city, for example. And as I mentioned before, crafting actually makes...
that's the Heaven's Ward rebuild, right? And then there's also Doma Castle rebuild.
Viable gear, unlike WoW, whose crafters are mostly useless once people can do looking for raid.
Ish, yeah.
You're going to get tired of hearing me say it. You probably already are, but story plays a major role in the aesthetics of 14 versus WoW as well. Both games look very good. Let me be clear. Yeah. But they each have their own visual style. WoW is slightly more cartoony and exaggerated. Yep. Everyone has giant muscles, even the fat dudes and the gnomes. 14 is a bit more subdued in all regards. Even the colors are more toned down. Some might call the character designs a bit anime. Meanwhile, the WoW character designs are more diverse than 14 as well. Trolls, undead, humans, pandas. In 14, it's more like human, tiny human, cat human, horny human.
Any horny humans in chat?
The biggest difference I've noticed comes down to 14's emotive characters and WoW's wider array of visually diverse zones. These emotive characters make it so 14 can easily work in numerous in-game cutscenes and match the voices. In order to do the same thing in WoW, custom crafted scenes are made, which take time and limit the number that can be included. That's not to say that Warcraft characters can't show emotion, or Final Fantasy doesn't have visually diverse zones, but each does their thing better.
Yep.
WoW can get more
Very
wild
fair
with
take.
their visual design because they aren't limited by players on older consoles. The PS3 version of 14 was still available until 2017, which means the PS4 version will be limiting players for a few years still. Because its limits are fewer and the devs can update and change their graphics more frequently, WoW can create a more wild, outlandish, and visually striking environment for players to explore. And because 14 was started with storytelling in mind, characters' faces are designed to show a wider array of emotions. WoW, on the other hand, added story after the fact, so the game wasn't designed to have a lot of close-up facial animations. So as they add new in-game cinematics, many of the ones we're getting now seem to have these weird flappy jaw yapping things going on. And that stands out from the other higher quality cinematic stuff we're used to getting in WoW.
Also, a note on that is, I think WoW's style is like good for like you can go and look at WoW zones from, I don't want to say 20 years ago, but like you can definitely go back and look like even 10 years ago, and WoW zones look really good. Maybe even like 15 years ago. You know, you can go a ways back. Whereas like Final Fantasy, I think if you compare like an Endwalker zone to an ARR zone, it's like, whoa, these are like dramatically different and stuff. And so I think WoW's style doesn't show its age as much because it's like more stylistic, whereas Final Fantasy is more kind of like realistic. So you know, it can look dated at times. But one thing I do think about FF is the gear. Like the way that characters wear gear, I think is like really good. Like I think the gearing is just really, really nice. Like the textures on gear and stuff in general is really good, and I think it's only going to get better with this update. That's cope. That's not cope. That's not cope, dude. That's not cope. But yeah, gear looks really good on Final Fantasy. At first, I remember like I was playing WoW and I started playing Final Fantasy for the first time, and I was like, ooh, I don't think the gear looks very good. And then now I'm like, oh my god, the Final Fantasy gear looks so good. It's amazing. So yeah. Yeah, WoW is more just like a flat texture that's kind of just been like wrapped around like a character, whereas it kind of feels like, I don't know, Final Fantasy gear is like, it just looks really nice. It looks really nice. But WoW does make some really good gear as well. I like Final Fantasy a lot now. I like the gear on it a lot. I'm not saying WoW is like bad. I kind of am quite preferring FFs. Yeah. Oh, music.
The music
dude.
of these games is also another thing worth pointing out,
my God.
as it again is a perfect example of my original thesis. Like
Time,
the graphic
time to shit on WoW. No, I'm joking. I'm not
design
gonna
of the
shit on
games,
WoW, but
they both have good music. But similar to WoW's visual style, Final Fantasy XIV's musical style is far more diverse and wild and fun. In Warcraft, music is mostly ambient,
Yes.
used to set the mood of a zone or a dungeon, usually something catchy, repeating, and not all that intrusive. But
it never really like is supposed to. I feel like WoW's music doesn't really like extract a feeling from you. It's kind of just you're kind of just like, oh, okay, it's there, it's present, it makes sense. But like, I think Final Fantasy's music, it informs how you should feel very well, and it captures the tone very, very well. And I love it. I love
Sometimes
the
because
FF
of
music.
its
It's really
generalized nature, there are moments where it might not fit the events that are on screen in an epic boss fight, for example. There's plenty of times I remember struggling through a raid to get to the final boss, and the music was pretty much the same as when I started the raid.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in 14, because the music, like everything else, is connected to the story, it's more moment-to-moment than WoW. Again, it's not like WoW doesn't do story moment music.
What is this?
Or Final Fantasy XIV doesn't have ambient zone themes, but they both do their own thing way more. Final Fantasy XIV has musical themes for sad moments and happy moments and silly moments and tense moments. It sometimes even tells a story. There are theme songs and leitmotifs and, more importantly, battle music.
Bro, I'm in Shadowbringers, I've done so much content. How's there anything left? no way there's so many more things for me to do. Okay, I'm in. Streamer, react. Why isn't he reacting? Something that I don't know if he's going to comment on, but like the fact is that the fight, so they designed the music with the fight, and that is what I love about this is because the bosses phase time-based rather than percent-based, you know it's going to hit like perfect, right? Especially when things are current content and they know the pacing of how well you get. Like it's all of these things pull together. It's not just like, oh, this song is good and they put it on a good boss and like, wow, that's good. It's like, no, it's like they designed the music with the boss, with the balance of the classes. That's how it feels. It's like they know how much damage you're going to do in a given time, and because they're pacing the bosses on time, not percent-based phasing, then they know, okay, you're going to do X amount of damage in X amount of time, so if the music, like, develops, I don't know how to use music terms, but if it, like, builds at this pacing, then you're going to hit the right tempo at the right times throughout the entire boss, and it's sick. I love WoW music. I always have. I do think the music is really, really good, but there's just, I could go on about how well, like, that's what impresses me so much about the music, is it wasn't just that they took a good song and just plopped it on a boss. It's as if they designed all of it in tandem, all of it at the same time, and that to me just blows my mind. Like, how did they do that? How did they, like, did Soken get the boss and then they go, right, okay, now do a song? Or is Soken sitting there like, nah, man, we gotta move these mechanics, because I'm gonna fucking drop this beat so hard at 37 seconds in, and you better be ready for it. You gotta hit him with something big. Light Rampant, yeah, send it. You know what I mean? Like I like to think Soken's in this master chair, and he just, like, you know, they're designing the fight, and then he just spins around. He's like, let me go to work, you know? Let me go to work, boys. Yeah, so I'm just really impressed with the music. Like, I'm not shitting on WoW music. I do think WoW, like, some of my favorite songs in gaming, just like they are in WoW. WoW's music can transfer me back to being, you know, in Ratatouille when when the reviewer, he takes a bite of the Ratatouille and then he's like he flashed it back to when he's a kid. His whole life goes through his eyes. That's what WoW music does for me, because I've got nostalgia, and it's just, I can go into an old WoW zone and hear the music, and it just sends me back instantly. Go into Westfall, oh my god. Like, that just takes me back and takes me back to the good times. But there's just something about Final Fantasy music that just gets me absolutely pumped. Yeah. Like, one thing about Final Fantasy music is I actually can name songs. I can tell you songs. I can tell you what expansions they were in, and like, I can tell you these things about Final Fantasy songs. I can't do that for WoW. I can kind of go like, oh, that's the song from that zone, but I'm so invested in the music. It's, whew. Whew. Nidhogg, one of my favorite fights ever. The music is just a jam.
It's just so good. Nothing makes wiping or learning a fight more tolerable than a catchy song in the background. Truthfully, Final Fantasy XIV just has a larger variety of music and uses it better than WoW, which is crazy.
I've said all that, but I can't actually remember which fight this is originally from. I swear it's in a couple things, but I actually can't remember where this is from originally, but I like this song very much.
Just has a larger variety of music. So good. Nothing makes wiping or learning a fight more tolerable than a catchy song in the background. Truthfully,
it's this
Final Fantasy XIV just has a larger variety of music and uses it better than WoW, which is crazy, because I remember listening to the soundtrack for WoW Legion and thinking how great it was, only to find out there were some songs not even used in the game, or if they were, I don't remember or missed it. I recall multiple versions of Anduin's theme, only for him to barely be involved in the main Legion storyline, and his theme to show up like maybe once or twice.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's so crazy to know they have all this amazing talent at Blizzard making music, and they don't even use it all? And remember Elite Tauren Chieftain? Final Fantasy XIV has a band of devs called the Primals. Except they don't just do meme songs, they play like all the hits from the game, lyrics and all, and let me tell you, they got some bangers. The difference is, while ETC was phased out of live events, the Primals are the highlight that everyone looks forward to.
That comes
it's as
from
if
the
the WoW
community,
community
you know?
thought ETC was kind of lame, and Final Fantasy XIV fans are like, more Primals, please.
Dude, I thought ETC was sick, dude.
So there's one last thing to talk about, and I'm sure it won't be controversial at all. The communities. I've been
Both
in the
of
WoW
them suck.
community long enough to
Hold
have
on,
formed
hold on. Both communities suck. We can agree on that. Yes, chat?
a pretty substantial theory about it. I know I'm going to get lots of crap for this one, but I think the general notion is that it's pretty toxic. Yes, your personal guild might be awesome, but generally, I think we can all agree there are high levels of toxicity in the WoW community.
No,
Now,
I'd say if you're in a guild in World of Warcraft, there's a good chance you might be racist. I'm not going to expand on that. Just that's how it is, man. I don't know what to tell you, dude. I swear to God, don't go into a guild Discord. It's not good.
This stems from the nature of the game itself. WoW is based in conflict. A game where two factions are pitted against each other from the beginning, so
Bro,
players
don't clip
already
that.
have
Please
an
don't clip
established
that.
enemy or other to focus their ire on. It is thematically ingrained in the community culture. And not only is player versus player part of the game, but so is competition on a PvE level, with world firsts and server firsts and more at a macro level, and then tools like DPS meters at a micro level to determine who is the best in the current party. Everyone is judging everyone at all times in Warcraft.
Yep.
It can feel overbearing. Even WoW's more cooperative events can seem like competition between players. As players are in the game longer and learn more and think they know more, biases form, opinions, valid or otherwise, take root, and soon the forums are littered with waste. You know, toxic. 14, at least in my experience, has been different. And it's hard to explain because, sure, there must be toxicity in the community. I've heard of it. I've never seen it. And maybe that's streamer privilege. Maybe it's just I'm very lucky. I don't know. But most people, if you ask...
I actually haven't had a single toxic experience in-game. I've only experienced it in Twitch chat where we've had, like, you know, either, like, you know, maybe somebody comes in and is toxic or, like, we've had discussions that get out of hand or something like that, or people just like having different opinions. But I've never actually experienced anything bad in game. But then I'm very sheltered because I'm a streamer and I mainly play with streamers. Yeah, with viewers. Yeah. What if the streamer is a toxic one? Just hypothetical. What the fuck did you say to me, you little shit?
will tell you how nice and wonderful and kind the 14 community is. But it's also jarring. If you're a WoW player coming to the Final Fantasy 14 community, there's a lot to understand that's different. Let me give you a great example. Rare mobs. Or in the case of 14,
Yes.
ranked mobs. In WoW, if you see a
It's a
rare
great
monster,
example.
you find a way to kill that thing as fast as you can,
Yep.
to grab friends,
Bubble
grab
CDs.
guildies, you want that special drop. In Final Fantasy 14, that's frowned upon by most of the community. I found this out
I
while
love how he says Final Fantasy 14, by the way, because he always starts slow and then he Final Fantasy 14, every time. Just listen out for it. It's great.
one day when I saw a rare and asked my free company, my guild, for help. And they were like, dude, wait for the hunt train. And I was like, what? What the hell are you talking about? It's right here, right now. And they explained that's not how the community does it. When all the rares are finally spawned, hunt trains... That's not how the community does it. When all the rares are finally spawned,
Wait,
hunt
what?
train... That's not
Wait, my headphones are cutting out at a specific...
how the community does it. When all the rares are finally spawned,
No,
hunt
okay,
trains form, and like 100 players move from zone to zone, killing them, each getting credit for the kills and any sort of rewards.
Yeah, this is
This
really cool.
idea baffled me. I was like, I am here right now. What if I'm not online later? I have to pass up the kill just cause? And they were like, yeah. I know it sounds crazy, but having done multiple hunt trains now, I understand it completely, and I actually prefer it. It's almost like if WoW had this same concept I may have actually seen a time lost Proto Drake once or twice.
Yeah.
Warcraft eventually had moments like this for Nash Tadar and Mechagon, but it's not on the same level. This camaraderie in the 14 community translates to how they treat new players for the most part as well. Sprouts, as they are lovingly called, are new players with a little icon next to their name. Normally, one would assume an icon next to your name letting everyone know that you have no idea what you're doing would seem like you just got yourself a scarlet letter and became a pariah. But in Final Fantasy XIV, it's the exact opposite. Instead of trolling or treating them poorly, most players cheer them on or offer advice and tips in dungeons. It makes it easier to understand if someone has no clue what's going on. You can instantly see they're new, and it's okay. And the game even rewards players with bonuses for having them in your group. And that's what I think is so special about the community in 14. I've seen plenty of players try new classes or a build or whatever in both WoW and 14. And people can get intimidated about being yelled at for sucking or not knowing something. But in 14, that little sprout icon lets players know immediately that you're newer to the game. So they have an expectation that you might not know some things. And it makes it easier to ask, which is honestly the biggest problem in WoW. New players are always afraid to ask what to do. Just as an example of how this mentality rubs off on you, I was doing my 14 roulettes
We had this conversation in chat the other day, so we don't need to like revisit it per se, but like it's so hard to give advice in World of Warcraft because everyone's just defensive. Like you're saying, Spectre, I read your comment. Like everyone's just so on edge. Everyone's so ready to like defend themselves. The reason everyone like something bad will happen in WoW, and people are so ready to like, instead of being like, well, hey, what went wrong? Can we fix it? You know, what can we improve upon? Everyone's just like, not me, not me. Or like everyone just deflects instead of it being like, well, I was top damage, so it doesn't matter that I, you know, died with that mechanic because like I was top DPS and you weren't. Like, well, I was top interrupts, but yeah, my damage was low, but like I was top interrupts and you weren't interrupting, so like you suck. And like everyone's just trying to find some piece of information that proves that they did things correctly and the other guys were the ones that made the mistake. Whereas at the end of the day, it's probably everyone made a mistake. Probably there were multiple mistakes that were made, and it was multiple people's fault that things didn't go well. And if everyone had played better, then it would have been okay. And not everyone approaches the game in WoW. I can't comment on Final Fantasy. I don't know. I don't know enough yet. I've got a very sheltered community approach, but like, wow, everyone's so ready to just, you know, go for the jugular on everyone, and it's like, we just need to chill. But the reason everyone's so afraid, like, I think it comes from fear. It comes from fear and arrogance, but I think the fear thing is a case of like, everyone's so afraid that people are going to point the finger at them, so they just stop pointing the finger at other people. And even if they didn't do anything wrong, they're just quick to jump on other people because it's like, well, I don't want someone... The amount of times I've been in a dungeon where somebody else is fucked up and they've gotten toxic at me, and then I can literally show, like, dude, you fucked up. I can show you right here you fucked up. But they don't understand the mechanic and they think that it was me or somebody else in the group, and I've tried to defend someone and say, hey, it wasn't them, it was you. And then they're like, no, you're a fucking idiot, like, da-da-da-da. And you have to be like, oh, this person's missing information, and they're not even aware that they're like unaware of this thing, and it becomes like a whole just deal. And yeah, so that's my experience in WoW sometimes, that people are just like afraid of getting blamed, so it becomes this, yeah, like you started the segment with, everyone's judging everyone else, you know. And yeah, so I don't know what it's like in FF. I've heard bad things about PF. I've heard bad things about like Duty Finder in general. So yeah, I've not heard like amazing things, but I know it's in general a lot better in FF. Like you can come in and be new and people won't bite your head off. So
or dungeon dailies, and got the final Omega.
So yeah, so
I was doing my 14 roulettes or dungeon dailies and got the final Omega raid. When it popped, I was in a group of almost all Sprouts. For those of you who don't know, this fight is what you would call a complicated dance. We wiped a lot. And in my guild chat, I was cursing up a storm. I was so upset that I had to go through this thing that I thought was going to take me 5 minutes, but I'm here at like minute 30. But in party chat with the Sprouts, I was like, we can do this. Come on, I'll teach you how to do this fight.
Fake.
I've often thought about what Sprouts in WoW would be like.
What a
The
fake
only thing
streamer,
I can think
huh?
of is that it would mostly be people dropping from parties that they showed up in.
Yeah.
Again, this isn't to say the Final Fantasy XIV community is perfect. Obviously, assholes play all sorts of games, but the general nature of the player base seems a bit more relaxed. Yes, someone will tell me I'm doing something wrong while I stream, but that's every game, for everyone. The biggest difference, I think, is the Final Fantasy XIV community does not tolerate a lot of the stuff that WoW does. The crackdown on bad actors is swift and immediate. And some of you may be like, well, that doesn't sound cool.
Bad actors?
I guess for the people who don't want to deal with that stuff, it's pretty cool. I don't know. The last
What
big
does he mean by
takeaway I
bad
have on
actors in
community
this
is
case?
the
People that
WoW
are, like,
player base
pretending to
seems
be nice?
always ready to attack their game, even while loving it. And the Final Fantasy XIV community is always trying to defend their game, even if it doesn't need it.
Dear Lord, don't I know it. God damn, I remember when I first started playing this game and I was trying to say like things that I kind of, you know, yeah, FF does this, FF does that, maybe they could do this, maybe do that, and people were like, yeah, but this is why, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's fine, and in time I came to understand that it was people just defending their game because they love it, and, you know, yeah. If you mention tab targeting one more time, I didn't say anything, dude. You know what's funny, Snaku? I'm actually going to a Denny's tomorrow. I'm going to go to a Denny's over here in Japan. So if I see you there, motherfucker, hat's coming off, pants coming off too, and we're going to tussle. Tab targeting cursed.
So you've made it some 30 minutes into a YouTube video and you find yourself here. This was all just sort of a long-winded way of saying again what I'm sure I made clear in the first 5 minutes.
That's gonna be me. That's gonna be me in the Denny's parking lot. We'll be looking for you, Snaku. I'm being slow motion too, buddy.
I really wanted to expand upon the differences between WoW and 14, and how there are players who like each of these. So I guess that's pretty much it for this video. Sure, there's definitely going to be something I missed or couldn't find a way to fit in the video. That's what comments are for, I suppose. So please, if you have something to add or additional thoughts or insights, or if you think I'm way off, let me know. This video was done out of love for both games and the knowledge that each has its own audience, and it's okay to like one and not the other. I hope the takeaway is that if you enjoy story games as much as I do, you'll check out 14, and if you could care less,
14.
You're probably already invested in WoW, and I don't see why you should leave. That's what it comes down to, at least for me. Anyway, thanks so much. Thank you to all the amazing patrons who make videos like this possible. Please, if you like this, share it with your friends or give it a like. That'd be swell. I would love it if you would consider subscribing and hit the bell and do all the things that, you know, you have to do on YouTube in order to see a video these days. But that's it. Thank you so much, and I will see you in game.
Yo, yeah, that was a great video. That was a great